Hi YouTube. I want to riff just a little bit about the portrayal of males and females in the media and even in human interaction, basic human interaction. Recently I saw on my Facebook a post by someone that I went to school with. He's a pretty well-educated guy, someone I have a medium amount of respect for. He posted a link to a video and he labeled it with one word: important. The video was called Dear Daddy. Now, maybe over the Christmas holidays, if I get a chance, I'll make a rebuttal video to this video because it is actually incredibly horrible. And the fact that he labeled it as important speaks to our attitudes, I think, towards men and boys versus our attitudes towards women and girls. And that video is a universal indictment of men and boys. It is also representing a disempowerment of girls and women. If you watch the video, you'll see what I mean. If I get a chance, I'll link it below, but quite honestly, I'd just as soon wait until I have a chance to make a rebuttal video. And that got me thinking. I watched the Survivor finale last night. It is interesting to watch the interpersonal stuff that happens between people. And the final tribal council and the final episode were really telling. They were examples, and of course this is anecdotal, but these were examples of the contrary to our general attitudes towards men and women. In other words, men are seen as brutal and as insensitive, and women, of course, are the sensitive, caring, feeling. They're the victims. Men are the oppressors, the victimizers, etc., etc. Just like in this Dear Daddy video, it's universally accepted that boys are mean to girls, and we'll call them whores and that sort of thing, and that girls don't do that. That's one of the things that they specifically said in this video, which I thought was very interesting, that girls don't do that. Maybe check reality, and that men are brutalizers. If you watch the final episode, some of the opposite characteristics are displayed. In particular, one of the women there, Kimmy, displays a female manipulation that was on display like I've never really seen before. She was attempting to ensure herself a spot in the final three. And she turned on the waterworks, she turned on the please have sympathy for me, please protect me, during a couple of the scenes. One where she was talking to Jeremy, who was actually the final winner, and she was trying to convince him that she was not plotting against him. She was actually trying to get him removed from the game. And he directly sort of asked her, and she turned on the waterworks, she turned on the female sympathy, very manipulative, and she was able to turn it on and off like a switch. And of course, they interview her afterwards, and she says, yeah, I was doing whatever I had to do. She turned it on and off like a switch. This is, I think, contrasted by both Keith and Jeremy. In the final analysis, there was a strange mix. It was actually quite an interesting episode. It was a strange mix of different things where people were playing idols, and there was immunity already in play, and there was a deadlocked, a tie vote. 3 people voted for one person, 3 other people voted for another. So they had to come to this really complex, let's dig into the Survivor rules and see what we do in this instance. And it came down to, if Keith agreed with the overall vote, then Kimmy would be removed. If Keith didn't agree, then he would be removed. So self-preservation would dictate you would agree and get her removed and save yourself. However, probably the instinct and the way he was raised was to protect the female. And he said as much. He was getting teary-eyed. He was getting very emotional in saying, she's a single mom. I think the right thing to do here is to remove myself from the game. Hardly the brutalizing male stereotype that we see. And you could make the argument, I suppose, that this is patriarchal and that actually this is ultimately harmful, except that Kimmy sat there and she did the same waterworks, and she looked at him like, oh, I can't believe you're doing this for me, right? She was playing the part that she needed to play to manipulate that response. And I'm sorry, if that version of patriarchy is bad, you got me, I'm out. Because it's not really patriarchal, it's consideration and empathy for other human beings is what it is. It's a protector instinct. And heaven forbid we got a few protectors around. And fortunately for Keith, although it didn't last long, he got voted out soon thereafter. Fortunately for Keith, other people kind of came to his rescue and talked him into not doing that. That's not really the right way. This is outwit, outplay, outlast. This is not protect the single mom here. And so he stayed and she went. And then in the final tribal council, a lot of the people in the jury were looking for some emotion from the contestants, the 3 finalists. They wanted to see someone make an impassioned plea for why they deserve to be there and to win the $1 million prize. And they even asked some questions trying to lead that, like, give me some passion here. And it didn't really come until the final question, which is about, what is your survivor story? Because these people are all returning survivor players. And they asked them all, and it was kind of like the robotic answer of, well, I didn't do so well last time and I want to do better this time, until he got to Jeremy. And he immediately teared up. And he talked about how this is for his family. This is for his wife. And they're the most important thing to him. And this isn't about him. This is about them. What a fucking brute. How dare he? That patriarchy is so terrible. What a terrible patriarch he is, to put everything on the line for his family. And he got it unanimous. Because the rest of the people on the jury are not ideological feminists, they're reasonable people. They're reasonable, everyday, average people. And they saw the passion and they saw the virtue in his reason for playing the game. I'm not sure how many unanimous votes there have been in Survivor history, but I got to think it's very few. And that was the reason he got the vote, because everyday, average, reasonable people see someone of virtue like that. I think we need to reassess our attitudes towards men and women. This attitude that women are powerless and are never deceptive, never violent, and that men are always brutalizers, that men are always insensitive, unfeeling, can't show their emotion. You think that? Watch the final episode of Survivor and see how Jeremy reacted when he won final immunity. He broke down. When he was in the final tribal council, he broke down. And I would say he's representative of the vast majority of fathers in the Western world. This is contrasted again by our attitudes towards men and boys that people accept. Watching the video, Dear Daddy, I'll link it below. Watching the video, Dear Daddy, it is a complete indictment of the male of our species. And it, again, is a complete disempowerment of the female of our species. She talks about how she was blind drunk at a party and then some boys took advantage of her. How did you get blind drunk? Blind drunk and suddenly you're a victim, but blind drunk and get into a car, you're a perpetrator, actually. No responsibility there, no agency on her part. In fact, the whole video is boiled down to her father is responsible for the fact that she gets raped when she's 21 and that she ends up marrying a guy who's a brutalizer because her father didn't stop somebody when they made some vague joke, sexist joke apparently, years and years and years before. And of course, that's conveniently vague. We don't know what the joke was. Let's hear the joke. Let's hear the joke that supposedly is the impetus for all of these dominoes that have fallen in her life. And she's powerless to do anything about it. Even when her husband hits her, she's still, I love him, but I hate him. You don't love somebody who brutalizes you. And the thing that's not discussed in that Dear Daddy video is, I think it's pretty well understood that the majority of women who seek abusive mates or end up with abusive mates, generally speaking, were abused as children. By either parent, who knows? And people who come from a loving household with compassionate parents who teach them to honor themselves first, as I did with my own daughter, A, generally don't end up with abusive husbands, and B, if they do, bags are packed, we're gone, and you're charged. Done. Because they respect themselves. They have their own agency, and they're empowered. And, I was thinking a lot about my video where I said, I'm a feminist and so can you, or whatever. I was riffing off the Stephen Colbert book. And I was thinking about, a lot of people said, yeah, I've thought of that too. We should take back the name feminism or feminist, or at least just point out when the ideological feminists, the modern feminists, say things that go against the dictionary definition that they like to point to about the social and political and blah, 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 equality of men and women, that we should point that out, that that's anti-feminist, that that's not a feminist act, that we should do that. And I was thinking a lot about that, and I was thinking, I think maybe that's probably the way to go. I'm not actually suggesting any action on that front, really, because I would have to, I think, be active, and I don't have the time to be active, right? So I'd have to spearhead it, and I'd have to really work hard at it, and I can't do that. But I think rather than self-identifying as a feminist and saying, but you're not, I think what we really need to do is just point out that these are not feminist acts. And point out the hypocrisy. I was watching again the Melissa Harris Perry ridiculous discussion where she called out, hard work and said, we need to be respectful of what that really means in terms of the slaves and hard work, as though modern people can't do hard work. The issue wasn't the hard work, of course. The issue was the enslavement. Rail against that, no problem. You have my undivided attention. Tell me that I can't say I worked hard today because that's somehow an offense to the slaves, when you've got people like Germaine Greer, one of the pioneer type feminists, at least, I guess, second wave type feminists or whatever, post, getting the vote and that sort of thing, feminist, writing a book called The Female Eunuch, right, which is talking about how women are so, I guess, castrated. That's not offensive though, right? When there were actually eunuchs that had their penis and balls cut off. But it's okay for her to call women in a free society who have every opportunity to exercise their free will and equating them with actual eunuchs. And I haven't read the book, but I've heard Germaine Greer speak a bunch. I've listened to hours and hours and hours of her online. And she talks about things like, here's the female eunuch, that she goes and gets the newspaper, the daily paper, but he takes it to work. So she doesn't get to read the paper that she went and got. Stand up for yourself, lady. Why is that happening? I don't know. In my house, my wife goes to the end of the driveway and she gets the paper. And I'm not even allowed to read the Best Buy flyer until she's done with the paper. And that's not because she's a domineering or anything like that. It's because she enacted the labor to go get the damn paper. And I respect that if I want to have the paper first, I'll go get it myself. I don't care. It's disempowering to talk about people in a free society subjugating themselves. It's ridiculous. And again, it seeks to sweep under the rug the agency of women, but also the manipulation of women and the victimization that women can perpetrate, because it happens. We talk about, fathers being brutal or husbands being brutal, et cetera, but we don't really ever have conversations about the fact that women are more likely to spank or hit their kids than men are, that women are more likely to kill their kids than men are. We don't have any talks about that because it goes against the narrative that we've placed women on this pedestal. And then we'll give men these really mixed messages like, we just want you to be able to express yourself, and then we're drinking male tears, or that patriarchy is bad, but we need he for she, we need men to speak up, and we need dear daddy. There's no dear mommy there. That's interesting. Or what about dear parents? Why is it his responsibility? But patriarchy is bad. So that's my rant for today. I think we need to treat individuals as individuals. We need to reanalyze and reassess our own, internally, I think, our own views of men and women. Because I've found that even I've become affected by this a little bit. I've come to think of men as a little bit insensitive, and I know I'm not. I mean, I'll move myself to tears in an instant. If I think about things that really mean something to me, my family and different things like that, or the mistreatment of animals. You want to see me break down, that'll do it in a heartbeat. But I've come to sort of almost accept some of these views because I am exposed to it a lot. And then I see men who exhibit virtue to a degree in some respects that I've never seen a lot of women do, and I just am immediately moved to a sense of deep respect for what I know is going on inside them, because I feel it in myself at times too. And I don't mean that in a vain way, but I feel like I have a 10% understanding of what I'm witnessing on a 100% scale. And it really, really moves me to a deep respect and admiration and a calm that in a lot of ways the world is in good hands, both by men and by women. And the crazies, the ideologues that are occupying a lot of the airtime and a lot of the background noise are the vast minority. And the only reason you don't hear a lot of the reasonable, everyday, average people speak out is because they're too busy raising their families and working for a living. And it's comforting to know that the vast majority of people are reasonable. But I think it wouldn't be a bad idea if they spoke out once in a while, because it's getting problematic up in here. Thanks for watching.